When Jesus came and he did his ministry and lived his life, I can only imagine that when he developed this awareness of who he was, he thought to himself, oh, I've got a lot of work to do. I mean, look at the Old Testament, for instance. And by the way, before we get into that, I do want to say that today I'm not so much going to be sharing a scripture. You know how I like to kind of pick it apart a little bit, but today I'm going to share kind of a broader theme that we see in Scripture over and over and over again. And it's really interesting when you really, really get deep into it. So in the Old Testament, you see all of these things that if you were to interact with them, you would be considered unclean. This means if you're unclean, if you're considered unclean, it's not like you're going to hell or anything like that, but unclean means that you cannot enter the temple, you cannot be around other people, or if there's like a contagion involved with it or something. So we see a lot of the skin diseases, leprosy, things like that. They're unclean, right? You can't get around them, you can't touch them, or you now cannot go into the temple, you now cannot eat with other people, you now cannot live in community, and that was the rule. You know, we would see that all the time. And the Bible gives a list of these things over a period of time. But then here's entering Jesus into the equation. Like I said at the very beginning, he comes in and he thinks to himself, I have a lot of work to do. Because what we are seeing through Jesus is this idea that he can make us clean. Let's look at some examples. And I'm just going to paraphrase, and I'm not going to give you the quotes necessarily, but let's look first at the woman who has been bleeding for 12 years. This is a menstrual bleeding. And think about this lady for a minute. 12 years. Not only physical exhaustion, she can't be in public. She can't be around other people. If she is married, and we don't know if she is, there's no intimacy with her spouse for 12 years because then that would have made him unclean. She's considered unclean. She cannot go into the temple to worship and be around people. And Jesus enters into her situation, and she, touches his garment, and she is made clean. She's made well again. And so just imagine the seclusion that she was going through and all of the things that she was going through emotionally, physically. If she wasn't married, then she certainly couldn't get married. So a lot of things going on there. The loneliness and just the heaviness of that. What about the dead? Back then you couldn't touch a dead body. And what does that show us about Jesus? Well, look at how many times Jesus interacted with the dead and brought them back to life. It's almost like he was reversing that curse in some ways. So we always think about the miracle of the dead becoming alive again, and that's fantastic, and we should definitely focus on that. But think about it as well, as Jesus comes into the situation with the amazing miracle of life, but also to erase that curse. So that's really interesting. What about eating meat sacrificed to idols? Well, we see this God interacting with Peter in this, that now all of these meats are now shown to him in a vision and saying, now you can eat because the new covenant is here. So that's really interesting too. Oh, what about the pigs? The pigs, you couldn't have pigs and you couldn't interact with pigs because they were unclean animals. And Jesus interacts with these pigs and takes demons out of someone, puts them into the pigs, and the pigs go to their demise. In each of these instances, we are seeing that Jesus erases the curse that everyone's talking about. Oh, leprosy, he touches the leper. He physically touches the leper, which should have made Jesus unclean, but his power is overwhelming in that. So in each one of these cases, Jesus is reversing that curse and almost rewriting the script for what society around us is saying. about who we are and who we should be and who we should not be. These people that were ostracized, they couldn't worship, they couldn't be in community, which is very important. Jesus is coming in and saying, you're one of us. So I guess my question, whenever I just kind of share that in general, is, who are you? You might say to yourself, and let me ask it maybe this way: who do you tell yourself that you are? You might say to yourself, well, I'm not very valuable. I don't feel like I'm very valuable, or I don't feel like I have a lot of worth, or I'm not enough, or, and really, one could say that we're not enough and then Jesus makes us enough. But what I'm saying is that in whatever we say about ourselves, if it is something demeaning of our humanity or something that the Bible does not say about us, then it's not from God. It's from the enemy. Jesus comes into our situation, and this curse that we have been placed upon us, whether we feel like we should be ostracized or we feel shame and guilt and all those kind of things, he comes in and says, you are now clean. And only he has the authority to do that. It's an amazing thing about Jesus, He doesn't care what the rest of the world is saying. He only cares what he thinks. And he created us. Well, hopefully you have a wonderful day.